Hello, everyone. Today is Tuesday, February 13th, and this is the weekly Sig Docs meeting for Kubernetes. I'm Zachary Corlison, your fabulous host, and I don't know where to go from here. Looking for new attendees. I don't see any. But hello, it's nice to see everyone again. So we have two items on the agenda today. And the first, let's start with finding consensus and guidance for how to represent API changes with different versions. I'm really glad to see this come up. This has been simmering on the back burner for a while, and I think this discussion is timely. So, Joe, I see your name attached to it, and I know you've been doing some work around versioning, both you and Steve. That reminds me, Steve, I just LGTM'd your version change to incrementing from 1.9 to, or excuse me, from 1.8 to 1.9.
Mm-hmm. We should be careful how we do that.
Say more.
Because well, that's a great thing to update. I totally agree we should, but we need to make sure that all the examples are then in sync with version 1.9. If that's the documented version that we're saying all these tasks and tutorials are related to. And I do not know that they are right now. And in fact, there's a whole bevy of changes that I put holds on just so that we, not because they weren't accurate or appropriate, but I just wasn't sure what the right way to do this was going forward, and wanted to think about taking it as kind of a lockstep, or even see if that was the right way to take it. Maybe you shouldn't be doing it as a lockstep.
So that change that Zach was talking about applies only to one topic.
And that's why I LGTM did this, because it looked like it was very limited in scope.
Yeah.
But that said, Joe, I think you have an excellent point, which is that right now we don't have good version enforcement.
So I've got a couple of remarks on this. So one is the concern that Joe just raised, and another concern is the reverse of that, and which has been happening, and that is that somebody goes through and changes the version in our YAML configuration files that we showed in the tutorial. But then, so what we had was someone had gone through and changed in the YAML file that this was deployment apps/v1. But what they didn't do along with that is in the prerequisites say you must have Kubernetes server version 1.9, right? So it stayed at 1.8. And that's what I fixed in this most recent. So I kind of think the way to do it is to not put comments in the YAML files that say things like, for previous versions do this. I think that's just too fraught with, we'll end up chasing our tail.
Yeah,
I think the way to do it is in the prerequisites, and this is done per topic. In the front matter of the topic, you have the option of putting this this value of min Kubernetes server version. If you set that to some value, then it automatically appears in the prerequisites that you must have at least this this version of Kubernetes server.
There is so I agree with you, Steve. I think that trying to wrangle version information in prose commentary is not the way to go, and it makes like mass updating kind of a hell if we ever have to do that.
Yeah. Can we take a look? There's a certain topic we could pull up, and it would illustrate these things. Do you want to do that?
Sure.
It's under tasks.
Well, hang on one second, me.
Yeah.
Tasks. Okay, I'm going to start sharing my screen. Okay, so tasks.
Run applications.
Applications.
And then the first one there is run stateless application using a deployment.
Okay.
Now, this change that you just LGTM, let's see if it shows up under before you begin. It does. So it now says your Kubernetes server must be version 1.9. Now, if we go down a little bit to the YAML file, the reason your Kubernetes version must be 1.9 is because someone recently changed this API version to apps/v1. It used to say something like v1 beta 1 or beta 2. But here's something I object to is that this comment that when people are going through and making these changes to YAML files, they put a comment like this: for versions before 1.9, use this. But that's not a true statement, because if you're all the way back at 1.6, you cannot use apps v1 beta 2. Right? So it's an inaccurate comment. I think we should stop trying to make comments like this in the YAML files. I think it's too hard to get it right, and we're never going to keep up with it. I think we should not comment in the YAML files, but make sure up under before you begin, that statement matches what you really have to use, say, apps v1 of deployment.
Yeah, this is total seeds of doubt right here. When you see something like this, you're like, really?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so I think that makes a lot of sense, because then we can use the enforcing version knowledge through the version selector on the site makes more sense than trying to handle all possible use cases inside of sample comments. It increases the number of variables where version information may or may not be accurate, and if we can just reduce that to the specifying the minimum version with a prereq with that conditional include, and then if you're interested in an earlier version, navigate to it with the site. I think that's a much better choice. So I agree with you, Steve. Is there anyone? I don't know. Do folks? Does someone see a different or better way to do this? Sorry, different and better. That's an important conjunctive.
I don't see either a better or a different way to do it. I think this sounds admirable. What I am wondering about is how or whether we can do a better job of making sure that information about appropriate versioning is available, especially for reviewers. In this particular case, I was aware of the issues because the stuff all started with 1.8, right? The v1 beta 1 was actually introduced in 1.8, and with a lot of announcements about v1 coming along in 1.9. I know about this because it was a release notes issue for 1.8, so that's a really specific sort of thing. I'm only taking this as an example case of, is there a way to get that information out better, analogous information, not just a specific case, like all the version stuff.
So Jennifer, when you say making this information available to reviewers, can you say, do you mean specifically, say specifically what you mean by making this information available to reviewers?
Well, so to come back to this specific case, I mean, it happens that Steve knew that comment was inaccurate, right? And I suppose that maybe not just for this case, but more generally, the guidance. Let me back up from what I was saying before. We should probably be aware of any documentation changes that specify version ranges for version changes, as opposed to specific versions. getting rid of that comment, then it's quite clear. You have to match up to 1.9 and the correct API version in the YAML. There's no ambiguity there.
Sure. Jennifer, I'm so sorry. I'm going to interrupt you long enough. Hey, if you're not currently speaking, can you please mute yourself? There's a lot of background noise on the call. Thank you.
Thanks, Zach. So did that answer? I'm sorry, I'm fumbling here a little bit.
So I guess what I hear you, so let me make sure I hear what you're saying, that in this case, in the specific incidents that we just looked at, it was because Steve's specific domain knowledge, when he looked at that, he saw this is wrong. And in terms of like actionable, in terms of what is actionable, what we communicate to reviewers, we need to find a way to ask reviewers to look specifically at version information when they update an article with some specific guidelines of what to do in mind. Am I hearing that right?
Thank you. Yes, that's much better than what I managed to stumble out with.
Okay, so
it might be enough to just make sure that the approvers are on top of this, because you can't merge the PR without one of the approvers saying approve.
Right.
So that dovetails, I think, nicely into our into the later discussion about review standards. But I guess so what approvers keeping an eye on versioning looks like right now, it sounds like we need to maybe add a specific expectation for reviewers that if there is version information on the page, to I don't know, do it like every time a page is touched, every time an article comes up for review, do we change it?
So are you talking about guidance for approvers now or all reviewers?
That's a fair distinction. Well, I don't know if that.
So I let me jump in here, Zach.
Yeah, go.
I think one of the things we can do, I totally agree with, Steve, everywhere that you've gone with this, is send out a note to all the reviewers on our team today and say, hey, as these are coming in, because these changes are becoming more frequent, please be aware, this is what we want to do. We want to make sure that the appropriate include tag is in the document that has the version content, that it represents the right version, and that the example matches that version number. So when you update one, make sure that the other gets updated if appropriate. And I think just an email as simple as that is really all we need to do to get out to the people that are making a lot of these changes, who happen to be in a very different time zone than us, and are not involved in these discussions, interactive conversations on Slack, etc. So I think it's just a matter of simple communication along those lines to get the vast majority of the win here. And then beyond that, the guidance for the approvers that, hey, keep an eye, double check this, verify it, should be fairly easy for us to separate around among the approvers that already exist.
Yeah, I agree. And here's part of what makes it tricky is that people are going through and just saying, all right, I'm going to go through and change all the YAML configuration files to V1, but they don't check to see what topics are using those YAML files. So they'd have to go to that effort. They'd have to do a grep or something to see, okay, now that I've changed this YAML file, which topics refer to it? And now I go to those topics and make sure that the front matter says min server version is 1.9. Or I find out that this YAML file isn't even being used at all anymore. And instead of updating it, I might ask, should we just delete this?
Yeah. But I think that's what we want to do, especially as somebody comes in and they want to make these updates, they want to bring it up to the latest version. That's admirable. We should support that. We should help them. Here's how we need them to do it.
It's awesome. Joe, are you willing to take on a draft of that email?
Absolutely. Already planned on it. That's why I brought it up at this meeting, so that I could draft that email and kick it out to everybody. Because I don't know. I'm not the only one who's reviewing these PRs, but I just seem to be my time zone when I usually start reviewing them. I'm up at the coffee shop at 4 a.m. I've got some hideous meeting with Tel Aviv, so I'm like, well, I'll just review a couple PRs. So I'm getting it, just as they're slapping them in there.
Nice, thank you. All right, just looking at.
I got one more thing to throw in here.
Go for it, Steve.
That is that blind updating of YAML files is something we need to be careful about, because for all we know, this topic, there might be some topic that uses a v1 beta 2 YAML file because it's making the point of some difference between features available in v1 beta 1 and v1. So I think that's probably unusual, but I do think you shouldn't be updating YAML configuration files without looking at the topic where they're used. And that's what's happening now. And it might be more than just getting the before you begin updated. It might be there's some other reason in the text that would indicate that we really do want this to still say v1 beta 2.
Agreed. So I think that's totally reasonable guidance to say if you update a sample file, also look at the context in which that sample file sits. Okay. Are we ready to move on from version checking?
Yep, all good. Thank you. Appreciate the input, guys.
All right. Also from Joe, I see follow up on responsiveness, roles, and responsibilities for reviewers and maintainers, and specifically for the PR for roles in Sig Docs. So it's been kind of a tumultuous week in terms of bot assignments and functionality there. Joe, do you want to give a short update? You're making the surprise face, so I will make an update and then you can correct me. So after talking with Eric Feda and the test infra team about the purpose of Tide and Prow and matching the expectations of what we are trying to do with it as Sig Docs for tech LGTM and docs LGTM and the intentions of the bot creators. It looks like we were trying to make the bots do things they were not designed to do. That the bot functionality was in fact working as intended, and that the solution to accidental approvals, that the accidental approvals that we were seeing as reviewers that we did not intend to have approval power, they would give LGTM reviews and suddenly the PR would be approved. The solution to that is to override permissions at the local level for the repo and make them specify that these specify that folks are reviewers rather than approvers to override upstream permissions. And what that looked like functionally was that Joe, bless his heart, went through and added directory level owners files for reviewers. And that's fantastic. It's a lot of work, but I appreciate it. So that is, I believe that we currently have, the result of that is that we have the functionality that we desire, that reviewers can give an LGTM and approvers can give and approve, and that our workflow should go as we expect. Is that summary accurate, and is that expectation true?
Yes. The only difference was those files already did exist. I didn't go add them. I just updated it. Everybody that was in those files was listed as an approver, which is what caused the unexpected behavior that Jennifer noted early on. Somebody gave an LGTM there. It was taken as an approver's LGTM. No further review was needed, and wham, it went straight in. And that's what was confusing us. And it wasn't until Eric said, hey, you misconfigured this whole thing. It was like, okay.
Okay. Excellent. So I think the TLDR is continue to use LGTM for tech review, and / approve for approve.
Can I butt in for a second?
Yeah, go for it, Paris. Hi.
So is this conversation, what's the word I'm looking for, over? I say that because I did invite Andrew, Jared, and some of the testing folks to contributor experience on Wednesday to talk this out further, especially the mechanics behind LGMT and approve. Do you want to table that conversation, or should we still go ahead with it?
As far as I can tell, it appears to be resolved. Does anyone have anything that is still outstanding? Is there any further discussion about functionality that needs to happen?
Well, there's an issue, or maybe a PR that Aaron Krickenberger opened to add this option to LGTM, add an option where LGTM does not act as approve. And all it is giving repositories the option to sit. LGTM acts as approve to false. It turns out in that PR, there's a lot of resistance to the idea. So I think that discussion probably needs to keep going.
Okay, so Paris, I think it sounds like it's worthwhile to continue the scheduled discussion just to make sure that all the ends are in fact tied up.
Okay, cool. And it's not.
I agree. So for what it's worth, Paris, what I told George, we were chatting in the Heptio Slack about this, was my sense of things, and it was partly my conversation that started. It was actually a conversation with Aaron that led Aaron, my conversation that led Aaron to file that issue. I think that for purposes of Sig Docs, we are in better shape now. But the issue got framed in a somewhat larger context. So yeah, I think it is useful to take it up there too. I mean, that's just giving a little more context to Steve's comment.
Okay, cool. Well, this is an open invite to anybody that would like to join us. Contributor Experience is Wednesday at 9:30. If you need a invite from me, I'll gladly send you one. But if not, it's on the Kubernetes calendar for you to copy.
Paris, I would happily take an invite to
Sure.
contribute. Thank you.
One more thing along these lines, these owner files that are in directories, we don't have them in all of our directories. In fact, the ones we have tend to be in our old directories that we're working on getting rid of. So the question would be, do we want to continue this pattern and have this in our new directories? It would allow the bot to do a better job of automatically assigning tech reviewers, I think.
I think so. I think continuing whenever a directory is added or whenever that information needs to be updated, having an owner's file in every directory and keeping that information current is absolutely valuable.
Worth noting that it's specific to a directory structure. So kind of think of them as leaf nodes. And as we've reorganized into concept tasks, things like that, the set of possible reviewers has expanded broadly because of our organization set. They may not be as beneficial as they once were when things were more organized by topic set within a directory.
Yeah, that's right. It used to be that every little thing would have its own directory, and inside index.md and then some configuration files. And now, as small as we get, we might have under tasks, we might have something called configuring pods and containers. And that covers a lot of ground. So it's trickier to narrow down the list of reviewers that should be automatically assigned to things in that directory.
I wonder if we could take advantage of the aliases in the owner sub-aliases file and just tag in an alias for like SIGs that are relevant to a topic. Except that requires us to go topic level, wouldn't it? Or maybe we I don't know. I immediately think of like use cases where tagging by SIG would be less helpful. I don't know. What do you think?
Yeah, good question. And I don't have a good answer to that, or I don't have a good answer to the idea that now our directories are more broad than they used to be. I think we'll probably just have to take a stab at it and see if it even makes sense as we go.
Sure. I think that's a better revision. I would be really curious to try both, to try adding individual reviewers and then try adding by SIG. The only reason that adding by SIG alias even comes to mind is because if we add individual owners at the directory level, that's 2 places to maintain. That's dual source material. We have to maintain that list in owner sub-aliases and in individual owners files, sometimes multiple owners files. So if we can tag by SIG alias, that may reduce the number of places we have to track reviewer names.
I think I would love to do that. Maybe Joe, maybe you know the answer to this. Can the bot go through and assign a group like, SIG storage PR reviews?
I don't know, but that might be a perfect question for Wednesday for the guys that actually wrote it.
Yeah.
It looks like it uses just a GitHub handle when I looked at the code, but it could be that if you put in the right handle and it's a team, it would apply to a team.
Right.
Okay. Yeah, that would be a great feasibility question for test infra. Okay. Let's move on to, so Joe, you linked to this pull request to 7133, and that's roles and responsibilities for reviewers and maintainers.
Just a straw man to start this thing off, that's all.
Yeah, it's great. So I think the discussion, like you point out in the Zoom chat, the discussion around that issue is really, really valuable, and I'd like to see us get that PR to final sooner rather than later. So what help do you need to get there?
I've got comments on it from Jennifer and Steve now. If anybody else wishes to comment before I take a pass at updating it based on those comments, please do so. Can we say by Thursday? And I will go on and just run through the whole damn thing and update it based on all the feedback and try to improve my language, because all the comments are super relevant. I was having a hard time disambiguating and describing what it is, and I think the feedback there is perfect. So with that, we should be able to align it into something that we could at least have for review by next meeting and say, okay, if anybody doesn't have any qualms, let's go ahead and merge this thing.
Sounds good. Yeah, Thursday sounds totally reasonable. Is there anybody who really wants to comment and can't comment by Thursday?
I can't provide any additional comments by Thursday, but I think I've done enough damage for this round. And if I really have something I need to say, I can take it up after it's merged.
It's hard to call it damage. They were very useful. Good try, though.
Yes, it was very, very constructive feedback. All right. So let's continue the conversation we started last week about setting expectations for reviewers and approvers in handling PRs and issues. And I think this is more of the we have a little bit of a like a hard mechanical conversation, and then some I guess softer conversation about method. I just want to point out before we get rolling, the link that Joe added from Paris. Thank you, Paris, for contributor stats over time. So last week we had talked about having a service level objective, not an agreement, an objective of 1 week or less. And if we look at the contributor stats for the repo, or responsiveness stats for the repo, we meet that handily. We'll post, let me find that link. If you don't have the meeting agenda open, I'll post the link in Zoom chat. It's fascinating to look at. Paris, can I call on you to talk a little bit more about this display and about the percentile breakdowns and how to responsibly and meaningfully draw data conclusions from this plot?
Ha. Now hold on one second. First, non-author activity. All right, sorry, no, I'm just getting it up on my browser right now. Time before any commitments or activities. Okay. Yep. So, yep, what you're seeing right now is just for docs. If you want any other repositories, you can filter for those at the top. But in this, it looks like the dashed lines that are going vertically are your releases. And then if you point your mouse over any of the other lines, like for instance, the 80th percentile, which essentially means your longest time that you've had for first non-author activity. So meaning if Zach is the author of a issue and then say Jennifer comments on it, what you're measuring here is Jennifer's comment. So how long does it actually take for someone to get something from us? Which is a great metric. I know the Go team and several other open source projects use this as a way of measuring the health and the velocity of their projects. But I mean, currently, just from, like a most recent date, it looks like your very good days, it's like 1.8 hours. And then your not so good days is a little more than 5 days. To get a comment or any, like I said, or any activity that could be closing the issue completely, assigning it a label, pretty much anything. Did I do that okay, Zach? Do you need anything else?
No, that was great. That's
And then at the bottom, it's just, this is pretty much based off of, I think, don't quote me on this. I think that's based off of your merged commits. So it looks like 12/31. Does that sound like about a time that your last merged commits went out? I'm still trying to figure out the last kind of, not graph, but what it's trying to show us.
so I think for the time, that's the interval plot. So that was as of December 31st. But those were the stats.
Okay. Yeah, I have to figure that out. Also, just a quick plug, we are looking for a DevStats product owner. So if anybody on the call likes data and wants to take this a step farther for us, Contributor Experience is looking for a product owner. So yeah, definitely ping me if this is something that interests you.
Cool.
But I mean, in my eyes, I would, set up your SLO as, modeled off your worst days, and obviously try to get better from there.
Sure. Now, these metrics are really useful and very timely. So thank you for sharing this.
Yeah, and the other thing is too, if you want to reverse engineer this a little bit and think about questions before you think about the data, and you don't know what graphs to use to answer your questions, come to me, because sometimes we might be able to create a graph for you that works better. And that's exactly what we're trying to do with DevStats in general. It's like I said, now we have all these graphs, now what? So I'm trying to reverse engineer this and think of, okay, what's something I really want to know from Kubernetes data, and try to mold it that way. So like I said, if anybody on the call ever has hey, I think it would be so cool to know X from, X time period, let me know, because we would love to get this to a point where, we can, really start blogging about the data and things like that.
Hey, Paris. Go ahead,
Does it show issues or PRs or both?
I'm sorry, Steve. What did I heard? All I heard was issues, PRs, or both.
Yeah, does the graph that we were just looking at show issues or PRs or both?
Both.
Okay, yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
And that's something that we're trying to see if we can refine that graph down to.
Yeah. Because I know I'm pretty good about getting to PRs, but I tend to let issues slide.
Yeah, that kind of a breakdown would be really helpful to see. I think we're all in the same boat.
Yep.
I suspect that our median values or our 85th percent values are sort of artificially high because of issues, and that if we looked at PRs, I think we'd see a different set of stats. Okay. Okay, that was really cool. So let's talk a little bit more about soft expectations for handling reviews. So like the two of the questions that I wrote down are when we see somebody else is assigned to a PR, like how long do we wait before we touch it? Do we touch it? Do we care that it's assigned to someone else? Do we need to set expectations for now that we've got a bot automatically assigning things? Do we need to worry about those assignments? Do we need to be what do we need to do there? What kind of an expectation do we need to set, if any, for how we handle PRs assigned to someone else for a review?
Good question. So here's my first question back is that does the bot automatically generate an assignee, or does it just automatically generate reviewers? And if it does automatically generate an assignee, are those people chosen from the approvers list or from a broader list?
I do not believe that it applies assignees. I think it recommends one, but leaves that to human interaction. Where it pulls that list from, I'm not entirely sure, but it recommends it based on some history, and it doesn't necessarily pull just from the approvers list from what I've seen.
I think it looks at the file history and makes recommendations from the actual GitHub metrics.
Oh, because I kind of thought the pattern was that the advice you get in the PR says something like this. This PR must be approved by someone in each of these owners files or someone in this owners file. And if you want to make that request, you say /assign that person. And I guess when they used the word, this must be approved by, I was thinking that meant that it was, when it suggested, we suggested you do a /approve Steve Perry. I thought that what that was saying is that we're suggesting an approver. But maybe that's not what's happening.
I kind of took it that same way.
That's pretty exactly what it says. To fully approve this pull request, please assign additional approvers. We suggest the following additional approver. It sounds like an approver to me.
Yeah.
But then, but that doesn't necessarily mean that that's who gets assigned. I'm looking at an example right now that I think is pretty typical of the ones I've seen since we started using the bot. And the assignee is the reviewer who provided an LGTM. And I don't see an assign command anywhere in the PR.
If you put an LGTM on, it will take that as I should assign this to you.
Yep.
I've noticed that when I LGTM something, it assigns it after the fact.
Yep, that's what I was assuming. But in this case, the person it's now assigned to is not an approver. So, then I guess those of us who are approvers need to be aware of things that are assigned to people who aren't approvers.
Is there still someone, is there still a reviewer assigned to that PR who is on the approvers list for the repo?
Nope.
Do you mind providing a link to the PR that you're looking at just so we can all see?
I pulled this one up just pretty arbitrarily. Okay, I wasn't looking for a typical thing necessarily, but I think it's not untypical. I just stuck it in a Zoom chat.
So Keeming Tang is a reviewer. it doesn't currently have write access, but I mean,
Well, yeah, I don't see anything wrong with what's going on in this PR, but there's nobody associated with it yet who is an approver.
oh, I see. And I'm looking at the bot response a day ago saying, hey, we suggest the following additional approver, which is odd. Sorry, hang on.
Well, while we're on this, one other question. Does it seem weird to anybody else that, given that I'm an approver, say, every time I open a PR, it says this PR is approved, and it slaps the approved label on it because the person who opened it is an approver? That seems ridiculous to me.
Seems dangerous.
Yes.
Well, that does not, in fact, seem to result in the PR getting merged, however.
Not until there's also an LGTM on it.
Oh, so good question. Suppose either someone else or I does a /LGTM. Is that enough for it to be automatically merged? I've never tried that experiment.
It is.
Oh, okay. So I think it's kind of weird that if you're an approver and you open a PR, it slaps an approved label on it and makes a note of saying, hey, this PR is approved by this person.
So that's really dangerous, right? It's really dangerous because, and I know when Joe and I worked in a previous community, right? The whole idea is you shouldn't be approving your own stuff, right? And here you're sort of, go ahead, Joe.
No, you're absolutely right. But just be aware, it doesn't allow you to LGTM your own stuff. So it forces somebody else to do it. So if the danger is somebody other than you looks at it, that's not necessarily what's happening here. But there is sort of a 2 people are required to review it. This is an exception if one of those people is already an approver.
Okay, so it's kind of a fast path built in. So there's a real circle of trust here, right? You really trust your approvers, right? They've been vetted and you really trust them because all it takes is one /LGTM and voila, right? It's going to kick off the merge process.
Well, it bypasses the writing review. So if I open a PR and what I would like to have is both a technical review and a writing review, and as soon as a tech reviewer puts an LGTM on it, it gets automatically merged.
Dangerous.
I haven't gotten the writing review. Then I don't always want a writing review. Sometimes it's a trivial change, and I don't want a writing review. But I would think that the default case would be that the idea would be that when you submit a PR, you want both a writing review and a technical review.
Zach, you're on mute.
That's a real mute.
Can you hear me now?
Yep,
Yeah.
you're good.
Okay, good deal. So in cases where we want to have a more intentional process, we can do 2 different lines, /LGTM and /hold. And so impose a hold for a writing review, but it does require active choice for that rather than the passive default behavior, which I don't know is necessarily a bad thing. I think I'm fine with how things are set up right now because we do put a great deal of trust in people who have approval power for the repo, and using that power mindfully seems like a reasonable thing to ask. So, if you want to, if you're working on something that needs specifically to get a distinct tech review and writing review, and you're an approver, then imposing a hold, there's no reason why you can't hold your own PR. You can, when you open the PR, you can say, hey, I'm putting a hold on this to specifically avoid tech review versus automatic reverging after. I English for a living, I swear. You can impose a hold on your PR to avoid automatic merging after an LGTM.
Doesn't that kind of feel like a Band-Aid, though? I mean, it feels like we're just kind of patching something that's a little dangerous. And so Because now you're going to see holds all over the place, and why'd you have to put the hold? Well, because I'm an approver, and if I don't put the hold, or if I forget to put the hold, oh boy, this thing might merge a little faster than I think. Does that make sense to anybody?
Well, it does, but I feel like we had that discussion in with Aaron Kirkenberger and Eric Feda in Test Infra. So I mean that's
They just said this is the way it is.
This is the conversation on Wednesday. Join us.
Okay.
So that said, we do have more than one hold label, and that hold is there are different options for the hold that you put on it.
I guess I would just need a little cheat sheet that says, okay, if I need a tech review and a writing review, well, here's what I ought to do. Just something so I can just ingrain it. I don't know if everybody else. I'd be scared I'd just mess up a little bit, right? So if maybe if I had a little cheat sheet that says, okay, well, if I do this, this is what I really meant. This is my hold, and I'll get a tech review, and then I know to. Would it help anybody else to have sort of that kind of process flow chart so that we're all on the same page?
So Brad, that sounds like excellent feedback for pull request number 7133 for SigDoc reviewer roles.
Excellent.
So
I'll
I
look
would
forward to your
encourage you.
comments.
I will make a comment.
Give me a
Excellent.
draft so I can paste it in because I'm a lazy son of a bitch.
I will do my best, Joe. I will do my best.
Awesome. Thanks, man.
Excellent.
Sure.
I love it when a plan comes together. All right. Let's see. Looking at the rest of our agenda. I'm sorry. I'm gonna loop back around to one of the original questions, which is if a PR is assigned to someone else. I mean, do we want to take a cookie licking policy at all? Like this cookie has been licked by someone else. In this case, by Prow. Prow has automatically licked this cookie on someone's behalf. Do we want to say, hey, hands off this PR for X amount of time, or do we want to just like plow through?
So it's kind of a circle of trust thing that says the following. You trust your folks to know what they feel comfortable reviewing and approving as part of the approvers. And in that case, it's no big deal that somebody helped me out. Let's say I see that Joe was assigned and I pulled it from him because he's busy. He took one of his 30 vacations to some coffee place. And so I'm like, so that's the nice thing, right? You can just pick stuff up if you all feel like everybody's comfortable that my review is as good as his review for that particular topic, and so it doesn't hurt.
Let me rephrase this more directly. Is there anybody who really feels strongly, hands off my PRs?
Nice way to look at it.
I certainly don't. Where I need the question answered is I worry about touching ones that are assigned to other people.
So I guess that's what I'm asking is, does anyone feel really strongly that we should have like a really strong boundaries on PRs until a certain date? And I'm not hearing that at all. I'm hearing that we don't really need to worry about this. PR is a PR, review away, reviews free, and just get the PRs reviewed. And that we're all going to have different availability around that. And that to me sounds wonderful. What we're doing, it works.
Yeah, it's one thing to say everybody's welcome to participate in the PR, and I think that we're all fine with that. But the other question is somebody who's not listed as an assignee or who has not been requested as the approver, should that person do a /approve, which could then lead to an automatic merge?
I see. If they're not the official assignee, should they give a /approve if they have approver power, because that could lead to unintentional hilarity.
Yeah, so I'm perfectly comfortable commenting in any PR, but if I see it's assigned to someone else, I'm a little reluctant to give the /approve because I don't know if that person it's been assigned to has an agenda.
Sure. Sorry, go ahead, Brad.
Well, the slight tweak to that is, let's say the one person's done the reviews and they've feel very strongly about the comments they've made and they want those comments to be addressed, and then you come over top of that and go, nah, I approve, right? So that's what you want to be careful of. Sometimes you have people that are trying to give really good feedback, and you want that feedback to be taken into account before an approval is given. And if somebody else comes behind you and just says, well, oh, I see that, boom. Do you see that subtlety there? You know, we used to run in that all the time. Like we used to use in Garrett a -1. If Joe gave a -1, I wasn't going to go on top of his -1 and approve it. It was just kind of a peer relationship we had in the project we worked on. Remember, Joe? So just somehow to kind of have that little peer respect of, oh, somebody's finding a problem here they want addressed. I don't want to run roughshod over that and just push it and merge it in.
Sure. And I don't really see that as a problem right now. I don't see it happening.
Oh, good.
Yeah.
Yep, agreed.
All right, cool.
So
Yeah, I think, so my sense of it is we are a small enough group of approvers. I mean, I notice that right now there is a long list of things assigned to Joe. Before I would even try to go look and explore any of them, I would probably ping Joe on Slack and say, hey, Joe, do you want a hand with these? I mean, we have communication mechanisms, and I think we have enough trust built up that we know how to handle this. I agree with Steve. But on the other hand, like I have provided, changes required reviews to PRs. I've never had anybody come in behind me and approve or merge. That just doesn't, I haven't seen it happen. I think that we know how to behave ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
And if I want to go, I know, speaking only for myself, I mean, if anybody wants to go into something that's assigned to me, I'm assuming, first of all, that there's one of two reasons, because it's something you care about and you want to see what I might be doing with the thing. You might disagree with how I'm handling it. And typically our PRs are smaller than this too, right? But sometimes they're not. Or I've been sitting on it for too long, in which case I'm eternally grateful if you take care of it, and I feel a little shamefaced, and maybe I'll do better to contribute, sort of pull my weight with the SLO going forward. So I think there's a bunch of variables here that we as a group all kind of operate with responsible assignments there too.
Sure. So, I mean, we talk a lot about trust, and trust is really important in any group, but I think what trust can mean can vary depending on the group's size and composition. So, let me ask a not so hypothetical question. If we scale up this group and add 5 more maintainers over the course of this year, is that still a sufficient basis of trust from which to operate?
My suspicion is that we won't hit a problem point until we breach probably about 12 to 15 people. And I'm saying that just based on personal dynamics over many years of organizations and different kinds of organizations, that's about the point where communications can start to break down.
I would agree with you. Based solely on organizational dynamics, I'd go higher, 15 to 20, but okay. So,
but the point is scaling up, and it's true that my comments all addressed only this small current working group.
Well, sure. So I guess no, it's still a little early in the pipeline. I was going to say let's think about scaling SIG operations, but we'll approve that PR when we come to it.
But I guess the thing is, if the approvers are being assigned automatically, it would seem like, let's say Joe assigned 20 of them automatically. Well, they weren't really like his. It was just somebody shoved them on him. And wouldn't he want me just to go and pick one? It wasn't like it was one that was near and dear to his heart, as opposed to, well, the tool was mean to him that week and gave him an extra 20. Does it make any sense? And then so sure. I'd want to be able to just be aggressive and say, let me help Joe out. He's been so nice to me in the past. Let me just go grab some. Is there a way to do that and not offend anybody? I guess we have the rule we said.
Contact Joe on Slack and say, hey, your PRQ looks long. Can I help? Or if he is being unresponsive, say, hey, Joe, unless I hear back from you, I'm grabbing these 10 PRs. Just practice like good proactive communication. I don't see the need, I guess, hearing this conversation, I don't see the need to try and create specific policy. I don't think this is a policy problem. I don't even think it's a problem. I think it's just it's like a relational check-in, and I think that we're all cool with how things are working, and it's working.
Cool.
So I think we can continue sort of consciously continue doing things the way that we've done them to this point, because it's a working relationship.
Right. And me putting /LGTM on one that he owns doesn't hurt a thing. It just makes him feel good that I've done it, and all life is good. I can do that.
Yep. And it increases our PR, it decreases our PRQ, and increases our throughput. So,
okay.
All right. We've got about 3 minutes left. Anything else for last minute discussion?
I'm good.
We'll put in one more plug for IBM Index next week. If you are in the Bay Area and you'd like to attend IBM Index, we're doing a doc sprint on Tuesday. Brad and myself will be there. If you want a discount ticket, hit me up. I can probably get you a code.
Please come.
Play at the Helm Summit instead.
Oh, nice. All right. 3, 2, 1. Done. That's a SIG meeting. Thanks, everybody. Good discussion. See you next week.